Okay.
Hi, Roseanna. Welcome to the Seeker's Journey TV show.
Thank you very much, Julia. I'm delighted to be here. And
Great.
I've never tried to do a webcam interview before, but I got to admit, this is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool, but sometimes it doesn't work so well rebroadcasting it, but here's hoping.
Yes.
So
everything seems to be working on the technical end here.
Yes, it sounds good here. So tell us a little bit about your book, about how to handle a windfall and the jealousy that ensues.
Well, it's from my understanding when I answered your call on Reporter Connection, this show is focusing on the Joseph Campbell theory of the hero with 1,000 faces. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes, and how you apply that in our own lives for our spiritual development and how to become more effective in the world, right?
Correct.
So when I responded to this, I actually pitched you my theory about what happens when the star of the hero's journey is a woman. And how is the story the same? How is it different?
Oh, that's great. Yes.
Yes.
You were going to tell us, and it was based on the story of Persephone?
Yes, partly on the story of Persephone, but it's also based on the story of Psyche and Eros, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But I came up with this idea a few years ago because out of a response to what was happening in my marriage at the time, when I realized I was having to overcompensate for my husband's immaturity way too much, and I tell that story in my book. Here we go. Get a good angle on it there. Windfall, taming the jealousy monster when you or a relative comes into money. And no, the man on the cover of this book is not my husband. Everybody asks that, but no, I hired a local actor for that photo shoot.
I did wonder that because that was you.
Yes, that is me. But the story behind this, I tell the story in my book, it wasn't just his hair-triggered temper, his emotional volatility. That by itself would have been bad enough, because I was walking around in a state of perpetual terror of whatever was going to set him off. It was also his attempts to get into a bunch of get-rich-quick schemes. You see, he was hoping that he would finally get to be his own boss after retiring from repairing subway cars for 27 years. Uh-huh. And he wasn't under the thumb of the man anymore, and finally had a shot at being as rich as all of those corporate fat cats that he despised so much. So he bought into a whole bunch of educational programs that purported to equip him with new skills, new tools, but he could never actually absorb any of it or put it into practice. As soon as one program did not turn a profit right away, he was off chasing the next thing that got waved under his nose. So he charged all of these to credit cards until he dug himself so deeply into debt that, in fact, it was about $168,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's enough to make just about anybody choke. The pension that he was getting from the subway, the transit company, it wasn't anywhere near enough to cover it, and I was having to support him out of the inheritance money that I'd gotten when my mother died. So you get the idea that this is not something that a powerful man does?
No.
He had been a little man all his life, and if he had any shot at all of becoming a big man, I wanted him to have that chance. I even became his marketing director in an attempt to just get the blasted phone to ring so that he would have customers. And in essence, I ended up trying to do his work for him.
Yeah.
I hoped that if he could get what he wanted and arrange his life so that lots of money came to him easily, he wouldn't be so terribly frustrated anymore and would no longer have any reason to take it out on me. Yes. So over time, it became clearer that I was really enabling what amounted to a gambling addiction in all but name. Eventually, of course, I did jump the jump, saying, make of your life what you will, but stop using me for a crutch. But before that happened, I fell in love with somebody else. And I was rather shocked at the hidden need that this affair brought out. You see, for a woman, taking care of a child is one thing. That comes naturally. It's what we're built for. And I was doing that. And gladly, I had one daughter from this marriage. But for a woman to have to take care of a grown man, too, is quite another. I'd had to hold it together for both me and my husband for so long. I had to wear the pants in the relationship, and it was seriously taking a huge toll on me. So when I had this other man who made me feel like he was stronger than me, I could be deliciously weak in his arms. I could feel like I didn't have to work so hard to control everything and let him take the lead. I was a mother, by no means inexperienced, obviously, but he made me feel like a shy, nubile girl who'd never had sex before. Madonna was right, folks. Biggest turn on ever. And it was a revelation. I was thinking, my God, what have I been missing all this time? Now, of course, having an affair was not exactly the healthiest way to get this need met. And as joyous as my times with him were, it also worried me a lot, because what did this say about me? Am I only capable of completely surrendering to a man with whom I've never had a fight? Does this mean there's something wrong with me? Well, in an attempt to answer this, I started writing music again. I'd been away from it for a couple of years while I was taking care of a young child. But it wasn't just any music. This was a full-fledged rock opera based on the myth of Persephone in the underworld, where she finds love. Hello?
Sorry.
Is this, someone else. You can edit that out. So she finds love in the unlikeliest of places and transforms the underworld in the process. I got a little postcard here that shows you a scene from The Passion of Persephone. And by retelling the tale with an element of bondage and discipline, you can see that she is tied up there and Hades is holding a whip over her shoulder. It would allow me to experience, at least on stage, all of the melting vulnerability that I dared not allow myself in my marriage. And my husband actually loved what I was doing. He thought the music was genius. I mean, I got to admit, he knew good art when he saw it. And it's also a very steamy show, and it has a lot of sexual tension. But what he didn't get, what he didn't understand, is that I drew the character of Hades to have all of the power, self-control, and leadership ability that he himself lacked.
Yeah.
So this dilemma was never going to get solved in the context of the marriage. He had spent almost all of my inheritance money at this point, and my only shot at survival was going to be to break out on my own and take my daughter with me. After all, she was going to have to make a choice of mate on her own someday, and how was she going to know what to look for unless her own father or the next man I chose provided a model of what a stepping up kind of a man would look like?
Yeah.
So here I was. Now I'm a single mother and doing very well in that role, surprisingly, but I'd never gotten the chance to enjoy being a maiden. The normal trajectory of maiden mother crone had gotten all mixed up for me. Being a career woman had made me capable of earning a livelihood, sure, but it hadn't served me well in the relationship arena because it placed me in the role of being a mother to my husband. What was I going to do? Was it possible for me to go back to square one and play catch up for what I'd missed? So now I had this new understanding that a relationship is not sustainable unless a woman is able to feel safely vulnerable in it. The Persephone myth, or at least my reinvention of it, shows how to make that happen. And from this, I came to a conclusion about the variation of the hero's journey that is the coming-of-age story. I noticed that when the hero is male, his initiation into manhood usually involves conquering something.
Right.
Sex is usually not a part of it, of that process. It may be a reward afterwards.
Right.
But it's the story of his victory is not necessarily all about the sex. A modern-day equivalent, of course, would be Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
But when the protagonist in the coming-of-age story is female, the transition from girl to woman is her first sexual experience. It is all about the sex, and how well or how badly that first sexual experience goes has a huge impact on determining who she grows into. And now my version of Persephone, in a state of post-orgasmic bliss in the second act, reveals a hidden talent for granting reincarnation to the spirits of the dead, and she becomes a queen in her own right. And in modern mythology, we see this with the Twilight series. And this is one reason, of many reasons, why Edward and Bella, that story struck such a primal chord with so many female readers of all ages. Everything in the first 3 books is leading up to the sexual initiation in the 4th book and the consequences thereof. And by the end of the book, Bella has become the strongest character of all of them. But what about a hero's journey that shows what happens when the woman blows it the first time and she loses her man? Is there a myth that gives hope to a modern woman and models for them a path to make themselves emotionally healthy so that then they can truly enjoy love if they screwed it up the first time, or however many times they may have screwed it up? So I find that answer in the myth of Psyche and Eros. Now, we don't have time on this show to go into the whole story and all the meanings of the myth, but it's basically the story of a human girl who is so beautiful that Eros himself, the god of love, falls in love with her, much to the anger of his mother, Aphrodite, the goddess of love herself. We're used to thinking of Aphrodite as being the essence of everything we want: love, romance, beauty, the nice home, the wonderful car, jewelry, perfume, accessories. But in this story, she gets nasty. And this is the origin of the Snow White mythos. We've actually got a couple of versions of Snow White on the big screen now and another one on TV, so it's a good time to look at this. Beautiful girl versus jealous queen. This is where it starts, with the myth of Psyche and Eros, with Aphrodite in the role of the queen. There's no poisoned apple, but there is a vial of perfume that Psyche gets by charming the goddess of death, Persephone. So she plays a role in this too. Like the apple, the perfume puts Psyche into a state of death-like sleep from which Eros has to awaken her with a kiss. But before they get to that point in the story, Aphrodite sets a series of impossible tasks for Psyche so she can prove herself to be a fit mate for Eros, her son. You see the impossible task and the series of impossible tasks in many versions of the hero's journey when the protagonist is a male. This is the female version. The first task is to sort a huge pile of seeds, some white, some of them are black, into separate piles. She has to do this by nightfall or she will be killed. Does this sound familiar? Rumpelstiltskin, the girl has to spin straw into gold. Cinderella has to pick lentils out of the ashes in the fireplace, at least in the Brothers Grimm version. Snow White has to clean the dwarf's house, extracting order out of chaos. In all four of these, the girl is distraught as the test begins, but in each case, they all get help. For Psyche, it's a colony of ants that shows up, and they come along and they do all of the sorting for her. Now watch out. It's really tempting to infer from this that girls and women are ineffectual, that they can't do anything on their own. No, that's not what the myth is saying. What it's really saying is that women need to learn to not be overwhelmed by what appears to be impossible. Feel the feelings, yes, don't deny them, don't sublimate them, but don't let them make you blind either. By patient waiting, an answer comes to you, and then you can extract order out of the chaos. And this is more of an interior kind of courage. It's not the kind that rattles swords and sallies forth to battle. It's an interior kind of courage, and it's the first step to emotional maturity. We women are so prone to roiling, turbulent emotions, and even when we're asleep, the worrying part of our minds never really shuts off. Even female dogs are like this. They've proved this scientifically with EFGs. And it's actually one reason why women can get perpetually tired, because they don't get the restorative rest that they need. Being able to consciously calm yourself and make your mind like a still pool of water, it's key to being able to see the solution that you would otherwise miss because of choppy waters or choppy emotions. The sorting out of the seeds is bringing order to your own mind and, by extension, to your relationships. Eventually, Psyche will be able to do this. The second test is Aphrodite sends her to a field near a river where there is a herd of battling rams. And she is supposed to gather the golden fleece from the rams. Does this sound familiar? Jason and the Argonauts have to gather their own golden fleece. This is the female version of that. And it is a deadly task. If she tries to go among these rams that are fighting with each other and butting their heads together and competing for territory, she's going to get gored. They will kill her. So she goes there, and she is extremely upset about this because she knows that there's no way she could possibly survive this, but she sits by and she waits, again, as she did with the seeds. And the ability to have courage is a crucial trait to develop in any relationship. What happens by patiently waiting for the solution to come to her? The reeds that are in the river whisper to her, and they make her an offer. They tell her that when the rams go to sleep in another part of the meadow, they will pass by this river. You just stay here and wait, and as they brush past us being the reeds, we will, their fleece will come off on our thorns, and then when they are asleep, you can come out, and the fleece will be right here waiting for you. And that's what happens. And all she has to do is be observant and have patience and wait for the right moment. And even the most feminine of women, if they can do this, if they can master the knack of this, they can navigate the most cutthroat of business environments. If they try to act like a man, they'll inevitably come off badly. But have you ever known a woman who just sort of sits by and lets all of the other men engage in these senseless arguments, and then suddenly she has the diplomacy to say just the right words to put everybody at ease? Crucial female skill. If you know somebody like this, watch them. It's somebody to model yourself after. So then the next thing that she has to do is an even harder task. If each task gets progressively worse, she has to gather a cup of water from the river Styx. Each of these tasks gets closer and closer to death. You know what the river Styx is. Yes. It is the river that leads into the underworld. It's the dangerous river that goes down to the underworld and back up again, and it's guarded by monsters. There's no way to get anywhere near even the edge of the river without being eaten alive by a monster or else being swept away by the river itself. And she has no idea how she's going to get around this one. And so she sits and waits again and observes. Who comes along this time? This is the eagle of the chief god, Zeus. The eagle swoops down with a goblet and scoops up a portion of the water from the river and brings it to her. The river Styx is the river of life and death, and what this represents is taking life in small, digestible bits, and it is the ability to budget your time, your energy, and the decisions that you make, and not taking on too much at once. And it's a higher brain function. And every woman needs to know how to do this. It's about setting boundaries for yourself so that you don't try to do too much. Final test. Aphrodite at this point is beside herself because Psyche has managed to outwit every single test. And this is a journey that takes Persephone all the way to the underworld. What she has to do is she has to fetch a small box containing the perfume of Persephone, the queen of the underworld. And this is actually a feminine thing to do. She's not going after a special sword or anything like that. She is going after something that is female. Mm-hmm. Perfume. Something that makes a woman alluring. And so she goes, now she has no idea how she's going to manage this one. Psyche goes to a tower. She intends to throw herself off it. And she's ready to give up at this point. But as many people do when they are standing on a precipice about to hurl themselves over something, just like Rose DeWitt Bukater does at the stern of the Titanic, Psyche hesitates as well. And she waits for an answer. And the tower itself gives her an answer. She is to find a secret entry passage to Hades instead of riding down the river. She is to take 2 barley cakes with her and 2 coins. And she is to let nothing distract her from her goal. Once she has gotten the perfume, then she is not to look inside the box. So she sets off. And along the way, she meets many distractions that threaten to pull her off course. Beggars, struggling merchants, and they're all on journeys of their own. But she resists sharing those cakes. She resists giving away the coins. And she has to have this kind of resolve, which is also a higher brain function, to get to the underworld and back. So she gets to the river Styx again. She gives 1 coin to the boatman, and he ferries her across. And there, at the entrance to the underworld, there's the 3-headed dog, Kerberos. And he's guarding the way, and Psyche throws him one of those barley cakes. Thus distracted, she gets inside. And she meets Persephone, charms her with everything that she knows, and easily, once she's there, she easily is able to obtain the perfume. Persephone just gives it to her, and it is the rightful secret core of pure femininity. And then Psyche heads her way back out again, past the 3-headed dog, where to whom she throws her second barley cake and gets past him, then gives her remaining coin to the boatman to ferry her back to the land of the living. And now she's got this prize that she hopes will finally get her god husband back, Eros. Then on the way back to Aphrodite, but Psyche can't resist having a look inside the box, just like Pandora. And she opens the box, and the perfume wafts out, and she falls into this deep death-like sleep. And she does not make it back to Olympus to be able to present the prize to Aphrodite. At this point, Eros himself has had enough, and he is convinced now that this woman really is a fit mate for him, and he goes to her and kisses her awake.
Oh.
So I wanted to present this as the female version of the hero's journey.
I think you're right. That's a fantastic analogy and a fit for the model.
Yes, and it's authentically feminine. It doesn't require a woman to be something that she's not,
Right.
or to be an imitation man.
It's perfect. I love it.
Good. Glad you like it. Now, to some extent, this is conclusions that I arrived at on my own. I also have to give credit where credit is due. Some of this is also based upon the work of Dr. Paul Dobransky, who is a columnist for Psychology Today.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Well, and that whole argument is in your book?
Not this whole argument. In my book, I talk about the experience of having inherited the money and how I lost it all and why. And I do talk about the gender differences between men and women as to how they handle receiving a big windfall like this, particularly what happens if it's the woman who inherits and the man does not. What a man can do to restore his feeling of self-esteem and rank in the world, even if the woman has more money than he does.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's Windfall, Taming the Jealousy Monster, and that's available on RoseannaTufts.com. And if you'd like to hear the music for The Passion of Persephone, you can go to myspace.com/Passion of Persephone Rock Opera.
Okay.
All one word.
Thank you. That is wonderful. We are looking forward to seeing that or hearing the music. And what about, did you record the play at all?
Yes, there are some videos on that site as well from a production that I did back in 2008, where I did a partial staging of it at the Capitol Fringe Festival. I basically presented everything that I had written up until that point, and there are some videos, live videos from that performance.
Well, I sense another book in your future.
I'm sure there's going to be a few more books coming along, but this is the one that's available now.
Okay.
And that's Passion of Persephone.
And that's at RoseannaTufts.com.
The book is at RoseannaTufts.com, and Passion of Persephone is at the MySpace page. If you Google The Passion of Persephone, you'll find it easily.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for being on our show today, Roseanna.
Thank you. I was delighted to be this, and I'm glad it all worked out technologically. Yes. This is a pretty cool way to do a show.
I like it.
Yes.
Okay.